Mr. Ortiz, thank you for your time. I would like to begin the first question by asking, or by saying, there's a lot of people who don't believe that every sector in Puerto Rico has been energized. Can you assure them that every sector has?
Yes, there is. Actually, the only sector that, and we have been specific about that, is La Muralla in Rio Grande, because we have an issue to decide how to energize it with the Forest Service. So we have been clear on that particular. In terms of people that could claim they don't have power at this point, the real issue is that many of the people are coming to their homes because they were either in the mainland or coming from a friend or family somewhere else in the island, and coming to their home, and they have an issue with their meter or some installation in their houses that was affected by the hurricane. But in general, all the regions we know of, all the sectors have been energized.
Okay, let's talk about the rainforest area. Have you reached out to the federal government to ask for the permit that you need to do the work there?
Yes, we did many times already, starting from March, since we were ready to energize the system. There are two options right now. One is running from Luquillo through El Yunque, which is a very long project. There is a temporary way to do it, which is the one that is being opposed by the forest, which is installing about 8 poles. It's really a shortcut, but they can have power in a few days. And the third one that is under consideration, and we discussed that yesterday with FEMA, is to install a generator for them until we do the long-term project. So we are right now assessing the situation. I think, I'll go with the temporary poles and then remove them. I don't see any impact on the environment, so we are very cautious about that. But apparently this seems like an issue among, between the residents and the forest people for some other stuff not related to the power.
Well, why can't you just bring in generators this afternoon, get the lights on, and then figure out a longer fix later?
Yes, actually, this is what we are proposing. So we agreed with FEMA yesterday that this is a solution we can supply to help them immediately. So that's what we're proposing right now.
All right. So how soon do you think? I mean, that seems reasonable. I can't see why FEMA would think that is unreasonable. So how soon could you make that happen?
Well, it's not only to bring a generator. We would like to do the installations correctly and to make sure it supplies the full demand. So it's a couple of days thing. It's not a major deal. When
do you expect to have an update as to what's going to be done?
No, every day we're following up on that.
All right. So
it's the last residence without power.
All right. So, but I mean, but for the people watching, that I have to be honest with you, that's what people have been asking me day after day for the last several days. So I just want to be able to give people an answer as to how soon there may be help for I know it's a small number, but how soon? I mean, are we talking this week? Can you get a generator to them this week? What's the chance of that?
Well, yes. I'll say 2-3 days is the most. We just have to find the right fit in terms of generation, make it correctly connected, and I'll say that before Wednesday next week they should have power on. If it is Sunday or Monday, I cannot say exactly.
Understood. I'll hold you to it. Let's talk about Vieques and Culebra. Right now, the residents there are getting power from the microgrid, but the microgrid is being powered by a generator. My understanding from your folks is that the line that runs under the ocean to the main island has been damaged. So my first question to you is, when will you be able to repair the main line under the water that would no longer require generators on Culebra or Vieques?
Well, let me give you the whole thing. The underwater line is not affected. What is affected is all the power lines taking all the power to the point of the water before it goes underwater. So it's the power lines that provide the power overground or aerial to So it's not a problem with the power lines underwater. It's before that. So all the service through Ceiba, Naguabo, there is where the problem lies. And since those power lines were installed through wetlands, it takes some time to fix it. However...
Okay, let me just stop you there. Thank you for clarifying, because after speaking with your director of generation, I misunderstood what he said. I thought the line under the water is broken. So I just want to make sure. It's the line under the water is fine. It's the point at which lines connect to the underwater line that's where you have the break, right?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Let me ask this. What has taken 11 months, or nearly 11 months, to fix that?
Well, the biggest issue is that is over most of the power lines going to the submarine lines. It goes over wetlands in big part. So the quickest way, just avoiding the permitting process, the quickest way to fix Vieques and Culebra systems were to bring generators.
Okay.
That's the first phase, okay? But in the long run, David, it's very important for you to know that the intention is to detach Vieques and Culebra with their own system. 75% approximately will be solar with batteries, and about 25% will be generators driven by either diesel or natural gas. That's still to be designed. But we want an independence from those islands, and as secondary and redundancy power, we were going to retrofit the system, the underground system, so that we will be providing the power again to the underground water power system. But that will work as a backup, really. We want to use this as a model for the big island.
All right, so you want to set them up with their own grids that don't require dependency on the main grid on the main island.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
that's the target in the long run.
But let me ask you this: why would you want to use generators long term? I mean, everything I've been told is that generators are not designed to be used long term. So what you're proposing, which is their own system, would use generators. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes. The generators really is to provide the quality of voltage and frequency in the system. As I said, 75% will be based on batteries and solar systems, and the generators will provide a stable load for whenever you have issues of for example, shadows during the night and so on. So you will always need to have a good quality on the service, some generation. The generators we're talking about are the ones that are designed to operate 100% of the time. For example, it's the same generators we use in PREPA to provide power to the island. You know,
for how long?
For how smaller scale?
For how long? How long do these How long would these generators last?
No, 30, 40 years.
Oh, okay.
You're talking baseload generators.
Okay. All right. Okay, so somebody watching this might say, yeah, that sounds great, but how long is that going to take you to do it?
Well, right now you have some generators, those are temporary. We just approved today a new generators that will last for 4 years. That will be the base of the generation. And through 4 years, we're supposed to have, and it was approved already by FEMA, to start the permitting process and the development of the solar grid.
All right. How long would a solar grid take to finalize?
Once you have the permits, this is a process of about a year and a half, no more than that. So we have, at the worst case, a 4-year with generators, and the power from the submarine lines, we hope to have that back within a few months.
Somebody who runs a hotel on Vieques said to me the other day that the generators were down, so they lost power for a day.
Yes, because those generators are not a continuous duty generators. Those are just for emergencies. That's not the kind of generators we're going to use for the long-term running of Vieques.
So what you want to do on Vieques, you want to use as a model for the Big Island?
Absolutely. Well, we have a big percentage of renewable power with batteries, and a smaller portion of base load driven by fuel.
All right, let's talk about...
On island is different. On island, David, is different because we have so many loads, different loads here. We're ambitioning 40% of renewables on island. I'm talking about the main island right now. 40% within 5 years and 60% with natural gas.
Okay, so let's talk about the Big Island, because one thing that people ask me consistently when I tell them, in fact, I announced last night that I was going to interview you today, and a majority, or I would say a large number of the questions people wanted me to ask you had to do with solar energy. So,
sure.
Listen, it sounds promising, but what I want to know for people who are watching is, how soon can they see the benefit? How soon can it be installed and up and working?
Well, right now there are 14 contracts with solar energy that are already permitted, previously contracted since 2012. We will have to just renegotiate those contracts because the new technology allows to provide a cheaper cost of solar systems. And I've been meeting with them since I joined the agency 3 weeks ago, and there are 333 megawatts to be provided through those 14 projects. Those 14 projects could be up and running in 15 to 16 months because they are permitted, they are designed already. It's just they are just a negotiation away, and we're pretty clear on the numbers we are expecting, and they do as well. So within a year and a half, let's say, to add some buffer, you should have at least 333 megawatts of solar power on island and in operation.
What is that actually going to power, that percentage that you're suggesting? How many municipalities? Yeah. What would that look like?
The 40% we ambition is around 1,000 megawatts. So that would be 1/3 of what we're looking for in the next 5 years.
How much of the island, in other words, would be powered by that?
40%.
Okay, but I mean, just give me. I mean, look, math was not my subject, so give me a visual of what that looks like.
Okay, between 12 to 15%.
Okay, so how many municipalities, for example?
Well, all depends on which municipality, but certainly you imagine 12 to 15%. You could power San Juan, for example, just with that.
Well, how do you prioritize it, Mr. Ortiz? How do you decide which municipalities get it, and is it better to do it in one area of the island versus another?
No. That allows me to tell you about how we invoice here. Any effort you do to reduce the power in Puerto Rico will be spread through all the municipalities. It's very important to understand that because whatever you do good in one generation unit or whatever will be spread through all the people in Puerto Rico. For example, in 2012, we added natural gas to the plant in Costa Sur in Guayanilla. Then we distributed those $60 million in savings through all the invoices in Puerto Rico. It's important because, David, you have been very vocal or at least you have heard that the people in Vieques and Culebra are complaining about paying invoices if the diesel is being paid by the Corps of Engineers, for example. And this is an issue that I would like to use your program to clarify. Whenever you have any impact in the invoice, either positive or negative, that is spread through all the customers in Puerto Rico. For example, all the diesel that is being paid by the Corps of Engineers or FEMA is not included in the bill. So whatever the cost is to produce energy today to PREPA is spread through all the participants of the billing process.
So in other words, everybody feels the same pain.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you this:
or the same gain, all depending.
Okay, that's fair. But is that fair? Is it fair for Vieques and Culebra to be paying the same as another entity that is not dependent on generators?
Well, that's the tariff. Imagine, what would we do if, at the end of the day, for example, Vieques and Culebra were mostly supplied by Aguirre, the plant of Aguirre, just before this event. What if, for being the farthest away and having a submarine and much more expensive infrastructure, we build them more for that? So it's not really a bad thing to spread this through everybody. So, but that's the way the law and the organic law of the agency works. You know, because there is a lot of population that they don't have their plants. They're just being supplied through other municipalities. Okay, so that's the way it works everywhere in the world.
What happens if you get the solar farm up and running on Vieques, right? And you know, they've got their own grid. Are they still going to be paying for everybody else on the island on a fair share thing?
Yes, because they will benefit as well from the redundancy that will be provided through the submarine cables when they receive power at less, than 12 to 10 cents from the natural gas and the bigger power grids on island.
Let me ask you, given the fact that you're from the island, you have experience as an electrical engineer, you've worked at the Aqueduct and Sewer Authority, you've been on the board of directors for PREPA, and now you're the chairman of the board, now you're the CEO. Do you think solar is the most important form of power? I'm just wondering your opinion. Does solar at this point, given where Puerto Rico is in the world, the stability of your grid, is solar the most important? Is that your number one priority? I'm just curious.
My number one priority will be natural gas, and second, solar. The main reason is because the natural gas is a very stable. It doesn't rely on the cost of the barrel. It's a domestic product. Actually, the USA are considering the natural gas as a security, a homeland security issue to keep those sources. And the price of it is very stable. There is over 100 years of that clean energy in terms of inventory. So it is based on the people who knows this business. They expect to have a stable price, very low price, under $3 actually, per million of BTUs until 2050. In the meantime, regarding the solar is getting cheaper as we speak. If you talk about technology that was in 2012, today is a lot cheaper to build and even more efficient than 6 years ago. So as we use the natural gas, certainly the solar will come to a point in which it will be a lot better to use solar rather than natural gas. That point hasn't arrived yet. But let me tell you, I was in Jacksonville in a conference, in a summit of the Americas about the natural gas. And the majority of the people participating there were from Asia, Taiwan, Philippines, China, and they are big importers of the natural gas of the U.S. because it's cheap and they're looking for economic development. So it's solar power is clean, but if we rely on that 100%, it will not be the cheapest power, and it will keep Puerto Rico behind, lagging in terms of participating in the economic development offerings to any investor worldwide.
Before this interview, I asked people to submit questions to me that they'd like for me to ask you. So the next many questions will be from folks. These particularly are coming from Facebook. Carla asks, what are you going to do about the high bills that are inaccurate? Some people got billed for thousands versus hundreds before Maria. We disputed our bills and all of our claims were denied. What are you going to do about that?
Yes, this is basically a priority right now at this point, David, because the original priority with the limited resources we have was to restore power. Second, we're now bringing illumination to many areas of Puerto Rico that are very, very dark. Third priority will be to fix, and we're already working on this, to fix all these invoices of several thousands of Puerto Ricans that are receiving bills. Many of them, I'll say the majority of them, are receiving high bills because they weren't billed for 4 to 6 months. That's one case. The other case is that we have many meters that were affected by the hurricane and created some issues, and certainly the owners or the customers could could certainly bring their claims, and that will be addressed. We're not cutting power due to lack of payment at this point. Those are the instructions we have given because we know we have a weak situation in terms of readings. We don't have readers, basically, to go to the field because those readings were supposed to come remotely. And we don't have that anymore for, let's say, 1/5 or 1/6 of the population.
Okay, another question. When will the blackouts end?
Yes, let me tell you, many of the people who have power today have power because of many patches. That's a reality.
Many patches.
I've been public about the issues we have to restore it to a more decent condition. So we will be in the next 4 to 6 months. I was assured it would be less, but let me play safe. 4 to 6 months, we will be replacing posts that were just standing, hanging from a rope or something like that, to make it right. And those patches will be fixed in the next 4 to 6 months. So you could expect some areas, smaller regions, just a few houses to have outages. That will be limited probably to minutes or probably a few hours. But it's basically in the spirit of restoring the infrastructure to the condition they should be.
How much of the work that was done after the hurricane to get the lights back on, how much of that work will have to be redone?
I don't have a specific number, but to me, I foresee around 10%. That's just my impression of what I've seen and what I've discussed with our people. There's still some big power lines to be restored, like the 230 kV, thousands of volts, in some areas that will provide basically redundancy. There's a few lines that are still down, and we're working on that as well.
Okay. Let's see. Looking for another question here. So many people were asking about solar energy. That literally is one of the main questions.
Let me give you something on that, David, because it's important for people to understand. Today, if you provide a good, I'll say, warranty, let's say from the federal government in terms of the warranty to develop these systems, and the government can provide the land in a cheap way, government land probably, to help bring down the cost of developing a solar system, you could be around easy between 9 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay? If you do natural gas with all the incentives or whatever, you will be talking about 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So they're getting closer one to the other, but I would like to give the people, to all the people that are after your information, to have the right numbers.
Martha asks, what makes you qualified to run PREPA?
Well, let me tell you, this is the 4th governor I've worked for, and with the 2 different parties. I've managed big corporations like Prasa, and let me tell you, I'll say in my resume,
let me just stop you for 1 second. For people who don't know what that means, PRASA is the aqueduct and sewer authority on the island. Continue. I'm sorry.
Right. When I joined PRASA back in 2004, it used to be the ugly duckling of the government, as it is today, the power company. And many people said after several privatization efforts that it was there's no way to save that entity. After new legislation, after hiring the right people, we brought that back to the investment grade on the bonds. We developed the infrastructure projects to make it compliant with all the federal regulations, and I was the president of that entity. So we changed that thing that was unchangeable at that time, and I'm planning to do so with PREPA. In PREPA, I was part of the board for a very limited time in an elections year, so you didn't have a lot of mobility to do what was right. Let me tell you, I don't have to think too much on what's right to be done here. Just bring cheaper fuels. Let's maximize the renewables, and improve the grid, basically mostly for reliability. And that's all the people is waiting for.
I think the fatigue, Mr. Ortiz, the fatigue is, you know, you were chairman of the board, so there's been mismanagement for years at PREPA, and you were chairman of the board, and to a lot of people, you seem like the same old guard that's been there for years. So why would you be the right person to come in now?
Let me tell you what I did in my limited stay in the board. The only 4 renewable projects in Puerto Rico. You can see it from Vieques, actually, in Culebra, in Punta Lima, wind turbines. You can see that in Santa Isabel, the biggest farm of wind turbines in Puerto Rico. And you have many solar systems in Humacao, in Guayama, and some others. Plus, the only addition of natural gas in Puerto Rico in that decade, which was the conversion in Costa Sur. So with a very limited time I was there, we made a lot of progress. So I'll have now the wheels to move forward in a more, I'll say, open scenario.
But how do you, Jose, convince people that you actually are the right honorable person to do it? Because what I've run into, but in all seriousness, I'm not from there, but you know, I've spent a lot of time there and devoted, quite frankly, a lot of my life over the last year to covering issues in Puerto Rico. And there's a fundamental distrust of anybody, especially at PREPA. So how do you come in and prove to people that you are doing what is right? How do you do that? I'm not criticizing you. I'm just asking you, how do you...
No.
Yeah.
But the thing, David, you're absolutely right. There is a trust thing, not only with PREPA, but with the government. But
right.
PREPA is kind of the poster child
right.
of this trust. I totally agree with you. And let me tell you, I'm talking about the things that we're going to do, but I don't expect anybody to trust us, but moving forward as quick as possible on the execution so that the people can touch and feel the results. David, I can tell you 1,000 times what we're going to do. Everybody can feel this is the right way to proceed. But until they touch and feel the benefit, nobody will trust us. So I can tell you that I will accelerate the execution so that everybody can really feel it rather than hearing from my lips, because the trust thing is something that will take years to recover. So the best way to do it is execute and make me feel it.
A lot of people are asking me if you have anything to do with helping to get the traffic lights working again. Is that in your realm of effort? Can you do anything to get more of the traffic lights working?
No, actually, before joining the power company, I was talking to the Secretary of Transportation, and apparently it's an issue of inventory of this kind of lights, you know?
Right.
Of traffic lights. So from my end, I can certainly supply whatever is needed, but since Puerto Rico is basically energized, we can provide any technical support to the Secretary of Transportation to help on that regard. I know it's a critical matter, and it's a matter of safety, basically.
Felix asks, was the whitefish issue illegal? What happened? Or was it another scandal created just to discredit the administration and ended up only adding more months to the recovery? Let's talk about whitefish. Did whitefish do a good job?
Let me give you, well, they did a good job when they were here. No doubt. That's factual.
Okay, so then stop there and let me ask a follow-up. If they did, then why did the governor terminate their contract?
Well, maybe due to all the shadows and gray areas on that regard at that point. But, you know, I cannot judge the governor for the decision he made almost a year ago. But the reality is, and this is factual, the local controller of Puerto Rico, the ethics department, they both expressed that this was done following the right procedures in place at that time. I'm not defending anything. I'm just saying the facts because I was not here.
Yes, sir.
not even near.
Yes, sir.
So, and according to the information I have from FEMA and from the federal government, the Inspector General of the U.S. will issue a favorable report on that contract. So, assuming of that is correct, the facts are that it was done correctly, maybe surrounded by a lot of noise, but apparently it was done well. These are facts, David. I'm not presenting my opinion, I'm just saying the facts.
And I appreciate it, sir. And if you've been following my reporting, that's really all I care about. I just want to give the facts to the folks. So the work was done well. It was done according to what you're saying. The contract was done properly, according to your ethics officer. And you're telling me that FEMA's Inspector General, you've heard, is going to issue a report saying that the whitefish work was legitimate and above board. Am I understanding you correctly?
You said that correctly, and that report should be out by this fall. That's the information I have.
That is significant because whitefish, the name of whitefish was dragged through the mud. They didn't have many people working for them. It was a husband and a wife couple. They had no large-scale disaster experience. I went to Whitefish, Montana, as the story broke, but I want to be fair to the company. And if the work they did was good, and if everything was above board, then the people need to know that as well.
Those are the facts.
Thank you, sir. Let me keep going as I look through the questions. Those were a lot of the questions on Facebook. Let me turn to some of the questions on Twitter. One of which has to do with your salary. As I understand it to be $275,000, you're making significantly less than your predecessors. Your most recent predecessor, who lasted about 24 hours, was supposed to make $750,000. For people,
just 250,000.
Oh, 250,000. I gave you a raise right there. 250.
I'll send your interview to the governor.
How does your salary, sir, given the number of personnel and the number of clients, how does your salary compare to others in your position?
No, very low compared to the other companies in the U.S. You know, there you're talking about millions and bonifications of millions of dollars, but this is not what I care for right now, David. I care to get something at least competitive on the island, not necessarily related to the other utilities in the U.S., because this is far from what the others are receiving in terms of compensation. But my interest here is to stay on the island. I'm a native from here. I was born and raised and studied in the public schools of Puerto Rico. And I'm pursuing to die here, my friend. And I've enjoyed this paradise forever, and I have to give something back. So my commitment is to stay here for at least a couple of years, put this in the right tracks, and then enjoy Puerto Rico again.
Shelley asks, can you ask him who's purchasing the fuel for Vieques and Culebra?
The Corps of Engineers.
Okay, and she says she didn't know it was them, but she says, why pay millions a month when Trump approved 100% emergency funding? This is an important question because, as I understand it, the emergency funding is no longer. Is that correct? FEMA has stopped emergency funding?
It is supposed to end tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And what
tomorrow, the 100%, not emergency funding. Tomorrow it ends the coverage of all the expenses 100%. From there on, it will be 90%.
90%. Okay.
Yes.
All right. And the rest of the cost, I guess, goes to the consumer?
Yes, unless we are asking for an extension. It may be granted, but until I have it, I cannot announce it.
How many of your clients are losing power on any given day?
No, that's not normal. That's not normal. You know, it happens. I don't know. In the past few months, let's say you have been out maybe 3 or 4 times in all. It's not normal.
No, I know it's not, but I'm just saying it happens regularly. And for those of us who live on the mainland, that's not something we deal with daily. But in Puerto Rico, that is life there. So I'm just, how many clients on an average day lose power?
Around 1% or less, 1,000 customers for different reasons.
And this is important for people to know, and I've tried to say it as many times as I can. Of the 3.4 million people on the island, you only have about 1.5 million customers. How many exactly?
Yeah, close to 1.5 million.
1.5. That's significant because that means, you know, nearly half, more than half the population isn't even one of your customers. So
let me correct that, David.
Okay.
When you talk about customers, you're talking about businesses.
Right.
You're talking about homes, families.
Right.
So it's basically everybody receives power from PREPA here.
So then what?
For example,
so then why do you?
Customer, that's not population. That means a client. A registered client could be a family of three members, or a business.
Okay. So 1.5 million clients would still account for everyone on the island because one client may represent a business or a home where more than one person is living.
Correct.
Understood. Okay. Continuing on. Let's see. What is the process of determining which power outages receive priority in terms of assistance and resolution?
Well, now, all depends on the cost. You know, it's a very broad issue you're bringing, because if it is a problem with a power plant that goes off, that's one issue. If it's a power line, normally it's just one that has a problem. So it's not such a thing like you can choose what goes first or after. You just go to the failure and fix the cause immediately.
What is the number one cause of the most frequent failures that you have?
The lack of control of the vegetation. You have a lot of trees and branches in our system, around the lines. And to me, that's the biggest single issue.
What are you doing to fix that?
Yeah, we're contracting a vegetation management company. We're issuing an RFP for that. We will contract in a regional way 5 or 7 companies to manage the vegetation under the power lines, to keep them cut and to avoid all the damages on the system. Let me tell you that the hurricane would have not caused so much damage if there were not so many branches and trees around the power lines. That's the major cause of the poles coming down due to the winds.
That's an embarrassing admission, Mr. Ortiz. David says, I see a massive solar field is up in Isabela. Is this going to spread to other cities in Puerto Rico? Is it backed by PREPA, or is it the municipality taking the bull by the horns?
No, this is PREPA giving the contract to a private entity who developed the system, and we are buying the power from them. So the future is private big solar farms, and we're buying the power from them according to the terms we negotiate.
Are you on track to comply with the fiscal plan and its timeline for transformation, including cost-cutting measures to drive down rates?
Absolutely.
And what does that timeline look like?
Sorry?
What does that timeline look like?
Well, I can tell you that there is a specific page that shows you the cost per kilowatt hour in the next 5 years. By 2023, we are looking for 17 cents per kilowatt hour. We were basically reviewing this with my team, because I want our team to make sure they understand the commitments on the fiscal plan. But certainly that's driven mostly for cheaper solar systems and natural gas, which is the cheapest of the ways to produce energy.
Do you believe PREPA should be privatized?
Yes.
Why?
Not due to their people or to resources, mostly to have an influx of new money, mostly for generation. If you have a plant new with the new technology today, replacing one of our old plants, that will bring down easily 30 to 35% the cost of producing energy, even with the same fuel. If you replace the fuel, you can bring it down close to 50%. But all this takes money, and this is a condition that PREPA cannot comply with. So mostly to produce the input of new money, and second, to provide a service with the most modern standards, since we're going to modernize the grid. On the grid, we're planning to have a concession, long-term concession, kind of the same way as the airport. And on the generation, we will end up selling all the assets in order for them to compete, to put money on new plants, new equipment, and new fuels. Basically, that's the way we envision this to happen.
And now I'm turning to Instagram to answer some of their questions. If another storm like Hurricane Maria were to hit Puerto Rico this hurricane season, what would happen to the power grid?
Let's assume the same things happen, same wind and all that. I foresee a little bit less damage, but I prefer to assume we're going to have the same power outage as with Maria. But something that we're certainly completely different at this point is how quick we can recover. Let's assume we lose the power in full, but we certainly have more than 3 times the inventory we had heading to Maria. We have the experience. We have more than 300 brigades inland from private companies. We have a lot more equipment, like helicopters and some specialized trucks and equipment to address the situation. We have satellite phones to communicate among the different brigades. So we're better prepared in case this happens again. And let's assume the worst, that all the power goes off. I can tell you that in less than a third of the time it took to recover from Maria, we will be recovering the whole island.
If vegetation is the #1 problem, I mean, is that like your #1 priority? Because if that honestly is the #1 problem, I mean, to me, that seems like where a lot of effort should be going right now, every day.
Absolutely, David. Obviously, there are things running in parallel, like as I said, illumination of the system, redo some of the patching that was built just to provide power in a quicker way. But in terms of the long-term, immediate and long-term maintenance, certainly vegetation control is the #1 priority. Seems simple, not highly engineering, but it's the most common sense we could use to avoid a situation like this in the future.
Do you foresee the PREPA rates going up?
Down.
How can you assure everyone that they will go down?
I can assure that our plants will be able to manage natural gas, that we have an excess of natural gas in the U.S., basically, and the natural gas is very stable in terms of cost. It doesn't depend on the oil prices. So, and natural gas is 50% cheaper than the diesel today, even in Puerto Rico.
Someone on Instagram said, I spoke with someone yesterday who just returned from Puerto Rico. She said that power has not been restored to everyone. She said there are whole towns in the mountains where there is no electricity. I read that only because that's not my understanding. That sounds incorrect. Is that true?
That's not true.
It's not true. Okay.
That's not true.
I didn't think so.
Complete towns without power in Puerto Rico, that's not true.
Okay. I didn't think so. Of your customers, have you asked and have you gotten a number as to exactly how many people do not have power who are still waiting on it?
No, there could be hundreds of people, but it should be isolated cases and mostly related to the own facilities, power facilities that are coming to their homes.
For example, so give me an example of what that would look like.
Well, you could have a base of the meter. The base of we have many of these cases. The base of the meter was hit by a tree or some other part of the house due to the hurricane, and they came from the U.S. or from other family member. They moved back to their homes and they found that out. The sector is powered, but their house don't receive it because they don't have the facilities. So they have to call immediately the agency so that we can fix that particular problem in that particular house.
Understood. I want to sort of wrap up with this question. It came from a woman whose name I don't have because I admit I accidentally deleted the message. I hit the wrong button. But it said, I love him, hashtag proud daughter. I assume it's your daughter who follows me on Instagram who wanted to say that. So I always try and do this. I always try and put a human face on people who otherwise get a lot of criticism, such as yourself. So who is Jose Ortiz? Where are you from? Are you married? How many kids do you have? What's your story?
I'm happily married. My daughter is 31. My son is 25. I've been in Puerto Rico forever. I studied in the public school, and I have a master's degree in finance. I also have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, specialized in power, so I know what I'm talking about in terms of prepa. I want to spend the rest of my life here in Puerto Rico. I'm enjoying the beaches, the good people, and if you go to the mountains and the west, let me tell you, you're going to find so delicious treatment around. So I know you have enjoyed the same.
What is your daughter's what is your daughter's name?
Sandy.
Well, hello to Sandy. Well, listen, listen, Mr. Ortiz. A lot of people are counting on you, and they're counting on me to hold you accountable, and that I will do. So, listen, I'm just like I root for the people of the island. I'm rooting for you to get it right. So, thank you for your time, and I hope we can visit in the future to follow up on some things.
Absolutely. I want to be held accountable, and let me tell you, I really appreciate your effort, which is much more passion than salary, what drives your help to Puerto Rico. So I really appreciate that, David.
It's been my honor. Sir, you've given us 45 minutes of your time, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.